The great hall of the Galactic Council Station floated in silence above Kashar Prime. Inside, representatives from 100 worlds sat in their designated sections. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime. Jake Morrison stood at the center platform, his plain blue uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien delegates around him. He had been chosen to speak for Earth today. The weight of that responsibility pressed on his shoulders, but his face remained calm. Years of military service had taught him to keep his emotions hidden when it mattered most. Behind him, Ambassador Chen Wei nodded encouragingly. Commander Lisa Grant stood nearby, her hand resting casually near her datapad. The council chamber was impressive. Crystalline walls stretched upward into darkness, and holographic displays showed star charts and diplomatic documents. Jake had seen many things in his 40 years, but this place still made him feel small. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were the newcomers here, the children asking to sit at the adult table. An elderly alien with 6 arms raised one appendage. Elder Tom, Jake remembered. The creature's voice echoed through the chamber. We have reviewed Earth's petition for full council membership. Before we vote, does anyone wish to speak? A section of the hall erupted with light. Jake turned to see a figure rising from the Zorvath delegation. Princess Valera stepped forward, her movements graceful despite her tall, angular frame. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, and her eyes glowed with an inner light. She wore armor that looked more ceremonial than practical, covered in symbols Jake didn't recognize. I wish to speak, Valera announced. Her voice carried across the hall without need for amplification. Elder Tom gestured for her to continue. Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had heard about the Zorvath Empire. They controlled 70 star systems and had a military that made most other species nervous. Princess Valera was heir to that empire, and she had a reputation for arrogance. This council has stood for 10,000 years, Valera began, walking slowly around the platform. We have seen species rise and fall. We have welcomed those who proved themselves worthy. But humanity... She stopped and looked directly at Jake. They are infants. Barely 50 years since first contact. They have explored so little of the galaxy. They have contributed nothing to our collective knowledge. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some aliens nodded in agreement. Others remained silent, watching. Jake wanted to respond, but Chen Wei had briefed him. Let her speak first. Learn what you're facing. Humans come from a small world in an unremarkable system, Valera continued. They fight among themselves. They pollute their own planet. They have crude technology and even cruder manners. And yet they demand a seat here, among the great civilizations of the galaxy. She laughed. The sound was sharp and cold. I have studied your species, human. You are weak. You are short-lived. You lack the mental capacity of the Zell, the physical strength of the Kragath, or the technological advancement of my own people. Tell me, what could you possibly offer this council? Jake took a breath. This was his moment. We offer perspective, he said quietly. His voice didn't boom like Valera's, but the translation devices carried it clearly. We offer determination. We offer solutions that others might not see. Valera's eyes narrowed. Pretty words. But words mean nothing without proof. Then let us prove it, Jake said. How? Valera moved closer. How will you prove that humanity deserves to stand among us? Elder Tom raised an arm. Princess Valera, if you have a suggestion, please share it with the council. Valera smiled. It was not a friendly expression. The 3 trials, she said. Ancient tests established by the founding species of this council. They were designed to measure worthiness. No species has completed all 3 in over 300 years. Many have tried. All have failed. The chamber erupted in conversation. Jake glanced at Lisa, who was frantically pulling up information on her datapad. Her face went pale as she read. The trials are meant to be impossible, an alien delegate called out. They were created to humble the proud, not to test applicants. Exactly, Valera said. If humanity is truly worthy, they will succeed where others have failed. If they are as primitive as I believe, they will fail like all the rest. Jake felt Chen Wei's hand on his shoulder. The ambassador leaned in close. "Don't accept this," Chen Wei whispered. "Those trials have killed people. They've driven others insane. This is a trap." But Jake was already thinking ahead. If they refused, humanity would look weak. If they accepted and failed, they would be humiliated. But if they succeeded— "We accept," Jake said loudly. The chamber fell silent. Even Valera looked momentarily surprised. "You don't know what you're agreeing to," she said. "Then explain it to me," Jake replied. "Explain these trials. We'll complete them." Valera's smile returned, wider this time. "Very well, human. The first trial begins tomorrow. I hope you're prepared to fail." Elder Tom raised all 6 arms. "Let it be recorded. Humanity has accepted the 3 trials. Success means immediate full membership. Failure means isolation for 100 years. Do you understand these terms?" Jake nodded. "We understand." As the council session ended and delegates began to leave, Lisa approached Jake with her datapad. "I've got preliminary data on these trials," she said. "Jake, this is serious. The last species that attempted them lost 12 people." Jake looked toward the Zorvath section, where Valera was speaking with her advisors. She glanced his way once, her expression confident. "Then we'll be the first to succeed," Jake said. "Get me everything you can find on these trials. We have work to do." Chen Wei joined them, his face grave. "I hope you know what you're doing." "So do I," Jake admitted. "So do I." The moon of Keshar Prime looked dead from orbit. Its surface was gray rock and dust, with no atmosphere to speak of. Jake stood in the landing bay of the transport ship, checking his equipment one last time. The environmental suit felt heavy, but he had worn worse during his military days. Dr. Helen Brooks hovered nearby, her tablet displaying complex diagrams. She was a thin woman with gray hair pulled back severely, and she had spent the last 12 hours researching everything available about the labyrinth of endless night. "The structure is ancient," Helen explained for the 3rd time. "We think it predates the current council by millennia. It's buried 3 kilometers underground." "What am I walking into?" Jake asked, adjusting his helmet seals. "A maze. But not a normal one. The walls can move. The layout changes. It uses some kind of technology we don't fully understand. Previous challengers reported seeing things that weren't real. Hallucinations. Fears manifested physically." Lisa checked the communication equipment. "We'll have eyes on you through these feeds, but expect interference. The labyrinth doesn't like observers." The transport settled onto the moon's surface with a gentle thud. Through the viewport, Jake could see the entrance to the labyrinth. A massive stone archway carved with symbols that hurt to look at too long. Several alien dignitaries had already gathered, including Princess Valera. She stood apart from the others, her silver skin gleaming under the harsh lights of the landing site. Jake descended the ramp. The lower gravity made each step feel bouncy and strange. He approached the gathering, and a holographic platform materialized in the air. Elder Tom's image appeared, speaking to all assembled. "The first trial begins now. Jake Morrison of Earth will enter the labyrinth of endless night. He must reach the center chamber and activate the beacon there. Time limit is 12 hours. If he does not emerge by then, he will be retrieved and the trial marked as failed." Valera stepped forward. 63 species have attempted this trial. Only 12 have succeeded. The fastest completion time is 9 hours and 17 minutes, set by the Vorath Empire 4 centuries ago. "I expect you'll last perhaps 2 hours before you quit." Jake looked at her directly. "I guess we'll see." He walked toward the archway. The stone felt cold even through his gloves as he touched it. Taking a deep breath, he stepped through. The world changed instantly. One moment he was on a dead moon under artificial lights. The next, he stood in a corridor of dark stone. The walls seemed to absorb light. His suit lamps barely penetrated the gloom. Behind him, the entrance had vanished. Only solid wall remained. "Comms check," he said. Static answered him. Then Lisa's voice came through, faint and broken. "Reading you, interference heavy, Be careful." Jake started walking. The corridor stretched ahead, straight and featureless. His boots made no sound on the floor. After 50 meters, the passage split into 3 directions. He marked the wall with a chemical marker from his kit, drawing an arrow pointing back the way he came. He chose the left path. It twisted and turned, sometimes climbing, sometimes descending. He marked each intersection carefully. After 10 minutes, he realized the marks were disappearing. He turned back to check a wall he had marked moments ago. The surface was clean. "Okay," he muttered. "So that's how it is." He tried a different approach. Using a spool of thin wire from his kit, he began leaving a physical trail. The wire would be harder for the maze to erase than chemical markers. The labyrinth had other ideas. The walls began to shift. Not dramatically, but subtly. A passage he had walked down minutes ago now led somewhere different. The wire trail broke as walls moved through it. Jake stopped and thought. This wasn't a puzzle to be solved. It was a test of psychology. The maze wanted him to panic, to rush, to make mistakes. He had been in hostile territory before. In the war on Titan, he had navigated enemy underground bases with no maps and failing equipment. The key then had been to stop thinking of it as a maze and start thinking of it as enemy ground. He didn't need to understand the labyrinth. He needed to survive it. Jake picked a direction and moved with purpose. When the walls shifted, he adapted. When passages split, he made quick decisions and kept moving. He didn't try to remember the route. He didn't try to map it. He simply moved forward, always seeking lower ground. In his experience, important things were usually buried deep. The hallucinations started around the 3-hour mark. He saw his old squad mates from Titan. They stood in the corridors, their faces bloody, accusing him of leaving them behind. "You're not real," Jake said aloud, walking through the images. They dissolved like smoke. He saw Lisa, her face twisted in pain, begging for help. He saw Chen Wei, disappointed and angry. He saw his ex-wife, his parents, his childhood home burning. Each time, he acknowledged what he saw and kept walking. The maze grew frustrated. He could feel it somehow, a presence in the walls. It threw more at him. Impossible geometry that made his head hurt. Corridors that seemed to fold in on themselves. Gravity that shifted and changed. Jake adapted to each challenge. When the floor became a wall, he climbed. When gravity reversed, he rolled with it. His military training had taught him to function under stress, to keep moving when everything said to stop. 5 hours in, he found himself in a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched up into darkness. Dozens of passages led out in every direction. This was clearly meant to overwhelm challengers with choice. Jake sat down. He ate a ration bar from his pack. He drank water. He let his mind rest for 10 minutes. Then he stood, picked the passage that seemed to lead downward at the steepest angle, and kept going. The center chamber appeared suddenly. One moment he was in a narrow corridor, the next he stood in a circular room. In the middle sat a pedestal with a glowing crystal. The beacon. Jake walked over and placed his hand on it. The crystal flared bright blue. A tone echoed through the labyrinth. The walls around him dissolved. He stood once again at the entrance archway, back on the moon's surface. The gathered aliens stared at him in silence. Lisa was checking her datapad, her mouth open. 5 hours and 42 minutes. That's the new record. By almost 4 hours. Princess Valera's expression was unreadable. "Luck," she said finally. "The second trial will not be so easy." Jake removed his helmet. He was tired but functional. "When do we start?" Elder Tom's hologram flickered with what might have been approval. "You have earned rest. The second trial begins in 2 days." As Jake walked back to the transport, he could feel Valera's eyes on his back. 1 trial down. 2 to go. Helen approached him, excited. "How did you do it? The maze should have been constantly changing. How did you navigate?" Jake shrugged. "I stopped trying to beat it and just started moving through it. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." Lisa handed him water. "The council members are talking. They're impressed. But Valera looks angry. Good, Jake said. Angry people make mistakes. He looked up at the stars visible above the moon's horizon. Somewhere out there was Earth. He was doing this for all of them. For humanity's future. The first trial was complete. But the hardest challenges were still ahead. The fighter craft looked small against the backdrop of space. Jake floated beside it in his spacesuit, running his hands along the hull. The Falcon 9 was a modified human design, built for speed and maneuverability. It wasn't the biggest ship in the hangar, but it was his. Lieutenant Danny Cooper's voice crackled through the comm, all systems check out. She's ready when you are. Danny was back on the council station, coordinating the support team. He had flown with Jake during the Mars campaigns, back when they were both younger and thought they were invincible. Now Danny had a family and a desk job. But he still knew fighters better than anyone. Copy that, Jake replied. He pulled himself into the cockpit and began strapping in. The controls were familiar, comfortable. He had logged over 2,000 hours in craft like this. Through the hangar viewport, he could see the trial course. The gauntlet of shattered stars was a dying solar system. The star at its center was collapsing, creating gravitational chaos. Debris fields filled the space between planets. The course required pilots to navigate from one end of the system to the other, passing through specific checkpoints along the way. The hangar was crowded with observers. Princess Valera stood with her entourage, her face showing no emotion. Elder Tom hovered nearby in a floating chair, his 6 arms folded. Representatives from dozens of species watched from viewing platforms. Lisa's voice came through the comm, Jake. I'm seeing the data on this course. The gravity wells are insane. They shift every few minutes as the star collapses. Most pilots can't even get past the first checkpoint. Most pilots aren't human, Jake said, starting the pre-flight sequence. The Falcon 9 hummed to life around him. That's not as comforting as you think it is, Lisa replied. Elder Tom's voice overrode the channel. Jake Morrison, you may begin when ready. The course has 7 checkpoints. You must pass through each one in order. Time limit is 4 hours. Failure to complete the course or missing a checkpoint results in immediate failure of the trial. Jake sealed his helmet and gripped the controls. Beginning my run now. The Falcon 9 launched from the hangar like a bullet. Jake felt the acceleration push him back into his seat. The stars wheeled around him as he oriented toward the first checkpoint. The gravitational turbulence hit him immediately. His ship lurched sideways as an invisible force grabbed it. Alarms blared. Jake adjusted quickly, using short thruster bursts to compensate. The craft steadied. First checkpoint ahead, Danny reported. Gravity well forming to your left. Big one. Jake saw it on his sensors. A massive distortion in space, pulling everything toward it. The checkpoint was positioned right at the edge of the well. He would have to skim along the edge to reach it. Most pilots would fight the gravity, trying to power through it. Jake did the opposite. He angled toward the well, letting it grab his ship. Then he used the momentum to slingshot around it, whipping past the checkpoint at incredible speed. Checkpoint 1 cleared, Danny's voice sounded impressed. That was crazy. That was physics, Jake replied. The second checkpoint was already visible ahead. The course got harder. The second checkpoint sat in the middle of a debris field. Chunks of destroyed planets tumbled through space, each one moving on an unpredictable path due to the gravity fluctuations. Jake threaded through them like a needle through cloth. His hands moved constantly on the controls, making tiny adjustments. He never stopped moving, never hesitated. Each decision was made in a fraction of a second. A piece of debris the size of a building spun toward him. Jake rolled the Falcon 9, passing through a gap that was barely wider than his ship. The metal scraped his hull. Alarms screamed. He ignored them. Checkpoint 2 cleared, Danny said. Hull damage at 15%. Still flying, Jake responded. Valera's voice suddenly cut into the channel. How is he doing this? His ship should have been torn apart by now. No one answered her. The third checkpoint required passing between 2 planets that were in decaying orbits. They were moving toward each other, soon to collide. The checkpoint floated in the shrinking gap between them. Jake watched his sensors carefully. He calculated the trajectory, the timing, the speed he would need. Then he punched the throttle to maximum. The Falcon 9 screamed through the gap. The planets loomed on either side, filling his viewport. He could see the surface details, the mountains and valleys. For a moment, he was flying through a canyon of worlds. Then he was past, and the planets ground together behind him in a slow-motion cataclysm. Debris exploded outward. Jake was already gone, heading for checkpoint 4. "This is insane," Lisa said over the comm. "Jake, your hull integrity is down to 60%. You can't keep taking hits like this." "Don't need to," Jake replied. "Just need to finish the course." The 4th checkpoint was the hardest yet. It sat inside a gravity anomaly that pulled in 3 different directions at once. Ships that entered it were usually torn apart by the competing forces. Jake studied it as he approached. He could see the vectors, the way the forces interacted. There was a pattern there, hidden in the chaos. He had seen something similar once, during a storm on Jupiter. The competing winds created pockets of calm in the center of the turbulence. He aimed for those pockets. Flying by instinct as much as instruments, he wove through the anomaly. The ship groaned under the stress. More alarms joined the chorus. But he made it through. Checkpoint 4 cleared. Danny's voice was tense. 3 more to go. The 5th checkpoint required a dive toward the collapsing star itself. Jake had to get close enough to pass through the checkpoint, then pull away before the gravity became inescapable. He dove. The star filled his forward view, a dying ball of fusion and chaos. The heat warnings maxed out. The radiation shielding strained. Jake kept his eyes on the NAV computer, watching the distance tick down. Checkpoint 5 appeared on his sensors. He was close now, so close he could see solar flares arching off the star's surface. Each one was larger than Earth. The checkpoint registered. Jake pulled up hard, fighting the gravity. The Falcon 9 shuddered. For a moment, he thought he might not make it. The ship was too close, moving too fast. Then he was rising, climbing away from the star. The gravity released him reluctantly. "That took 5 years off my life," Danny said. "Mine too," Jake admitted. His hands were shaking on the controls. He forced them steady. 2 checkpoints left. The 6th required navigating a field of gravity waves, ripples in space itself caused by the star's collapse. They moved in pulses, predictable but intense. Jake timed his approach. He accelerated between waves, riding them like a surfer rides ocean swells. When a wave hit, he let it carry him forward instead of fighting it. It was dangerous and unorthodox, but it worked. Checkpoint 6 cleared, Danny reported. 1 more. The final checkpoint is right at the system edge. Jake pushed the battered Falcon 9 toward the last checkpoint. The ship was barely holding together. Hull integrity was at 30%. Half his systems were offline. But the engines still worked, and the controls still responded. The 7th checkpoint appeared ahead. It seemed simple compared to the others, just floating in empty space. But Jake knew better. This was the final test. The course wanted to see if pilots would make it this far and then make a mistake from exhaustion or overconfidence. He approached carefully, checking for hidden hazards. There were none. The checkpoint was exactly what it appeared to be. Jake passed through it. The course was complete. All checkpoints cleared. Danny's voice was jubilant. Time, 2 hours and 31 minutes. That's 40 minutes faster than the previous record. Jake turned the Falcon 9 back toward the council station. The ship limped through space, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from a dozen small breaches. But it flew. Back in the hangar, Jake climbed out of the cockpit on shaking legs. The Falcon 9 looked like it had been through a war. Scorch marks covered the hull. Pieces of armor plating were missing. One wing was bent at an angle. Princess Valera approached him. Her expression was harder to read than before. "Your ship should have been destroyed," she said. "By all calculations, it should not have survived that course." Jake removed his helmet. "Maybe your calculations don't account for human pilots." "The final trial will prove whether this is skill or simply luck," Valera said. She walked away without waiting for a response. Lisa handed Jake water. 2 down, 1 to go. How are you feeling? Jake looked at his hands. They had stopped shaking. Ready for whatever comes next. Elder Tom approached, his ancient face thoughtful. You fly like no pilot I have seen in my 1,000 years. Where did you learn such techniques? Earth, Jake said simply. We've been flying through dangerous places for a long time. The final trial awaited. But for now, Jake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity was proving itself, one impossible challenge at a time. Mount Vuldos rose from the planet's surface like a spear aimed at the stars. Jake stood at the base camp, staring up at the peak lost somewhere in the clouds above. The mountain was the tallest in known space, stretching 30 kilometers into the sky. At its summit, reality itself became thin and strange. Dr. Patricia Moore adjusted the medical scanner strapped to Jake's chest. Your vitals will be transmitted continuously. If your heart rate exceeds safe limits or if you lose consciousness, we're pulling you out immediately. Understood, Jake said. He was dressed in light climbing gear. The environmental suit would protect him from the thin atmosphere, but he would need to climb using his own strength and skill. Captain Ryan Hughes stood nearby, coordinating the base camp operations. He was a stocky man with a beard that regulations usually didn't allow, but out here in the field, nobody cared. The route is marked with beacons every 500 meters. Follow them. Don't try to shortcut. People who leave the marked path don't come back. Jake nodded. He had studied the reports. 17 climbers had attempted this mountain in the last 300 years. Only 2 had reached the summit. 5 had died. The rest had been rescued in various states of mental breakdown. The mountain did something to people. The higher you climbed, the more reality became unstable. Climbers reported seeing impossible things, experiencing moments from their past and future, encountering beings that might have been hallucinations or might have been something worse. Princess Valera stood apart from the human team. Her brother, Prince Korath, had joined her. He was taller than his sister, with darker skin that held a blue tint. Unlike Valera, his face showed concern. Sister, perhaps this trial is too dangerous, Korath said quietly. The human has proven himself capable. Maybe we should reconsider. Valera's expression was cold. He accepted the challenge. The trials must be completed. All 3, or none. But if he dies, it will reflect poorly on us. The Council already questions your judgment in issuing this challenge. He won't die, Valera said. He'll break. He'll quit. And humanity will learn their place. Jake checked his equipment one final time. Climbing gear, oxygen supplementation, emergency beacon, rations, water. Everything he needed to survive. Everything except protection from what the mountain would do to his mind. Lisa approached him. You don't have to do this. We've already proven ourselves with the first 2 trials. We could petition the Council to grant membership based on that alone. And Valera would fight it, Jake said. She needs to see this through. So do I. Why? What are you trying to prove? Jake looked at her. That humans don't quit. That we finish what we start. That's what will earn us real respect out here. He walked to the starting point. Elder Tom's hologram appeared, flickering slightly in the thin atmosphere. The 3rd trial begins now. Jake Morrison must reach the summit of Mount Vuldos and activate the beacon there. Time limit is 72 hours. Any use of mechanical assistance or flight will result in immediate failure. This must be done by human effort alone. Jake began climbing. The first few kilometers were almost pleasant. The slope was gentle, the path clear. The beacons glowed softly, marking the route. He fell into a steady rhythm, breathing controlled, movements efficient. At 5 kilometers, the air started to feel different. Thinner, but also somehow heavier. Colors seemed too bright. Sounds echoed strangely. Jake pushed forward. The first hallucination came at 8 kilometers. He rounded a boulder and saw his father standing on the path ahead. His father had died 20 years ago, but here he stood, looking exactly as Jake remembered him. You're going to fail, his father said. Just like you failed at everything else. Just like you failed your squad on Titan. Jake stopped. His chest tightened. The words hit harder than any physical blow. "You're not real," he said aloud. "Does that matter?" his father replied. "I'm speaking truth. You let them die. You made the call to retreat. They trusted you, and you left them." Jake closed his eyes, breathed, opened them again. "I made the best choice I could with the information I had," he said. "I've carried that weight every day since. But I'm still here. I'm still moving forward." He walked through the image. His father dissolved like mist. The climb continued. At 12 kilometers, the path became steeper. Jake's muscles burned. His lungs worked overtime despite the oxygen supplementation. But he kept climbing. More hallucinations appeared. He saw Lisa, dead and broken, accusing him of dragging her into danger. He saw Chen Wei, disappointed and dismissive. He saw every person he had ever failed, every mistake he had ever made, given form and voice. Each time, Jake acknowledged what he saw. He didn't deny it. He didn't run from it. He accepted it as part of who he was, and he kept climbing. At 16 kilometers, reality truly began to break down. The mountain path split into multiple versions of itself, each one overlapping the others. Jake could see himself climbing in different timelines, making different choices. In some, he reached the summit. In others, he fell. In one, he never came to the mountain at all. He focused on the beacons. They remained constant across all the versions. He followed them, trusting the physical markers more than his own senses. Time became meaningless. He might have been climbing for hours or days. The sun didn't seem to move in the sky. His watch showed numbers that didn't make sense. At 20 kilometers, he encountered something new. A figure stood on the path ahead, but this one was different. It wasn't someone from his past. It was himself, but older, grayer, harder. "Turn back," the older Jake said. "This isn't worth it. You're risking everything for pride." "Not pride," Jake replied. "Duty. Responsibility. Humanity needs this. Humanity will survive without council membership. You're doing this for yourself. To prove something." Jake considered that. Was there truth in it? Probably. He was human, after all. Motivations were never pure. "Maybe," he admitted. "But even if part of this is personal, the outcome still matters. Sometimes the right thing gets done for complicated reasons." The older version of himself studied him, then nodded and faded away. The final stretch nearly broke him. At 25 kilometers, gravity seemed to shift randomly. One moment he was climbing vertically, the next he was walking on level ground, then suddenly he was falling upward. His inner ear couldn't cope. Nausea overwhelmed him. Jake vomited inside his helmet, then spent precious minutes cleaning it out enough to breathe. He kept climbing. The cold was intense. His gear was rated for these temperatures, but the mountain seemed to find ways around the insulation. His fingers went numb. His toes were ice. He climbed. The hallucinations became a constant presence. The mountain showed him everything he feared, everything he regretted, everything he hoped for and dreamed of. It showed him Earth burning. It showed him humanity enslaved. It showed him victory and defeat in equal measure. Jake climbed through it all. At 29 kilometers, he could see the summit. A small platform of stone, impossibly far above. The beacon sat there, glowing faintly. So close now. His body was failing. Every muscle screamed. His vision blurred. The medical monitors Patricia was watching must be going crazy. But he was so close. The last kilometer took 4 hours. Jake hauled himself up centimeter by centimeter. His hands bled inside his gloves. His breathing came in ragged gasps. Finally, impossibly, he pulled himself onto the summit platform. The beacon stood before him, a simple obelisk of crystal. Jake crawled to it, reached out with a shaking hand, touched it. The crystal flared brilliant white. The light seemed to consume everything, wiping away the hallucinations, the strange reality distortions, all of it. For a moment, Jake existed in pure clarity. Then he was standing at base camp again. Ryan caught him as he collapsed. "How long?" Jake gasped. Patricia checked her instruments. 47 hours. You just set a new record. And you probably shouldn't be alive. Your vitals were critical for the last 6 hours. Jake lay on the ground, staring up at the sky. He had done it. 3 trials, all complete. Prince Karath approached, his expression one of respect. I have never seen determination like that. You could have quit a dozen times. We would have rescued you. But you didn't. Humans don't quit, Jake said. His voice was barely a whisper. We might fail. We might die. But we don't quit. Princess Valera stood at a distance. Her face was unreadable, but something in her posture had changed. The absolute confidence was gone, replaced by something else. Uncertainty, perhaps. Or the beginning of understanding. The trials are complete, Elder Tom's hologram announced. Jake Morrison has succeeded where countless others have failed. The council will convene to render judgment. Jake closed his eyes. His part was done. Now humanity's fate rested with the council. But he had given them something to think about. He had shown them what humans were capable of when pushed to the limit. Sometimes, that was all you could do. The council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled, and representatives who normally sent proxies had come in person. The air hummed with conversation in a dozen languages. Jake stood at the center platform again, but this time he wasn't alone. Lisa and Chen Wei flanked him, along with Dr. Helen Brooks and Patricia Moore. Captain Ryan Hughes stood nearby, his arms crossed. Jake had spent 2 days recovering from the mountain climb. His body was still sore, his hands still bandaged. But he could stand, and that was enough. Princess Valera entered the chamber with her entourage. Prince Karath walked beside her, speaking quietly. She nodded occasionally, but her eyes were fixed ahead. When she took her place in the Zorvath section, she finally looked at Jake. Their eyes met across the distance. Elder Tom raised all 6 of his arms. The chamber fell silent immediately. We are gathered to render judgment on humanity's petition for council membership. Jake Morrison has completed the 3 trials, a feat not accomplished in over 3 centuries. Before we vote, Princess Valera, as the one who issued the challenge, you have the right to speak first. Valera rose smoothly. She descended from her section and walked to the center platform. Jake tensed, but she stopped a respectful distance away. I challenged humanity because I believed them unworthy, Valera began. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. I saw them as primitive, weak, insignificant. I believed the trials would expose these flaws. She paused, and something crossed her face. Not quite a smile, but something softer than her usual expression. I was wrong. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Prince Karath leaned forward in his seat, watching his sister intently. The human succeeded not through superior technology or physical strength. He succeeded through adaptation, through persistence, through a refusal to accept defeat. These are not the qualities of a weak species. Valera turned to face Jake directly. I have studied humanity since issuing this challenge. I have learned things that shame me for my earlier dismissal. Humans evolved on what they call a death world. A planet with extreme weather, dangerous predators, and limited resources. By all logic, they should have died out millennia ago. She began walking slowly around the platform as she spoke, addressing the entire council now. Instead, they thrived. They spread across their world, adapting to every environment. Desert, Arctic, jungle, mountain. They conquered all of it. When their own planet tried to kill them, they learned to kill back. When resources were scarce, they invented new ways to survive. When nature was cruel, they became more determined. Helen leaned close to Lisa. Is she actually praising us? I think so, Lisa whispered back, looking as surprised as Helen felt. Humans have faced extinction events, Valera continued. Volcanic eruptions that blacked out their sun for years. Ice ages that covered continents. Plagues that killed millions. Asteroids. Droughts. Floods. Each time, they survived. Not because they were strong, but because they refused to give up. She stopped walking and faced the council again. When humanity reached space, they encountered challenges that would have stopped most species. Their first attempts failed. Rockets exploded. Astronauts died. But they kept trying. They landed on their moon knowing the technology might fail, knowing they might die. They did it anyway. Jake listened, fascinated despite himself. This wasn't what he had expected. They fought wars in space. On asteroids and moons where one mistake meant death. They built stations in the void. They terraformed planets. And when they finally encountered us, the great galactic community, they didn't beg for acceptance. They didn't try to prove they were like us. They simply asked to be judged on their own merits. Valera's voice grew stronger. The trials were designed to test 3 things. The labyrinth tests mental resilience and adaptability. The gauntlet tests skill under extreme pressure. The mountain tests the ability to face one's deepest fears and continue forward. Jake Morrison succeeded at all 3 not because he is exceptional among humans, but because these qualities are fundamental to his species. She looked at Elder Tom. I issued this challenge to humiliate humanity. Instead, they have humbled me. I formally withdraw my objection to their council membership. Furthermore, I propose we grant them full status immediately, without the usual probationary period. The chamber erupted. Aliens stood, shouting in their various languages. Some in agreement, some in protest. Elder Tom raised his arms, calling for order. Does anyone wish to speak against this proposal? Elder Tom asked. An alien from the Kravath delegation rose. He was massive, covered in thick armor plating, easily 3 times Jake's size. I wish to speak. Not against, but to add perspective. My people are warriors. We have fought humans in combat simulations. We expected easy victories. We were wrong. Humans fight with a creativity and ferocity we have rarely encountered. They turn disadvantages into weapons. They win battles they should lose. This is not luck. This is who they are. Another alien stood, this one from a species Jake didn't recognize. She was small and covered in crystalline scales that refracted light. My people are scientists. We have reviewed human research. Their science is crude compared to ours in many ways, but their approach is fascinating. They question everything. They challenge assumptions. They pursue knowledge even when it's dangerous. We could learn from them as much as they could learn from us. One by one, delegates rose to speak. Most spoke in favor of humanity. A few remained skeptical, but none outright opposed membership. Jake felt a weight lifting from his chest that he hadn't realized he was carrying. Finally, Elder Tom called for silence again. We will now vote. All in favor of granting humanity immediate full council membership. Lights appeared across the chamber, each one representing a vote. Jake watched them bloom like stars. Green for yes, red for no. The green lights vastly outnumbered the red. The vote is decisive, Elder Tom announced. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Ambassador Chen Wei, please step forward. Chen Wei walked to the center platform, his usual calm demeanor cracking slightly with emotion. Elder Tom produced a small crystal, glowing with inner light. This represents your seat on the council. You speak with full authority for your species. Welcome, humanity, to the community of worlds. The chamber erupted in applause. Various species expressed approval in their own ways. Some clapped, some hummed, some created light displays. Jake found himself grinning despite his exhaustion. Valera approached him as the ceremony concluded. You earned this, she said quietly. I underestimated your species. I won't make that mistake again. We could have been enemies, Jake replied. But we don't have to be. The galaxy's big enough for all of us. Valera considered this. Perhaps. My brother suggested that Zorvath and Earth could benefit from cultural exchange. He may be right. My people have conquered much, but we have rarely been challenged. We have grown complacent. Humans could teach us about struggle, about adaptation. And you could teach us about the galaxy, Jake said. About civilizations that have stood for thousands of years. We have a lot to learn. Prince Korath joined them. I have been reading about Earth's history. Your world wars, your space race, your struggles with disease and disaster. It's remarkable. Every challenge made you stronger. Not always, Jake admitted. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we made things worse. We're not perfect. No species is, Koroth said. But you keep trying. That's what matters. Lisa approached with the rest of the human delegation. Her smile was bright. We did it. We actually did it. You did it, Chinwei corrected, looking at Jake. You were the one on the line. I was just the one who climbed and flew, Jake said. You all got me here. This was a team effort. Patricia checked his medical readings one more time. You need rest. Real rest. No more deadly trials for at least a month. Deal, Jake laughed. Helen was already talking excitedly with several alien scientists who had approached her. Ryan was comparing notes with a military delegate from the Kravath about combat tactics. Elder Tom floated over to the human group. I have lived 1,000 years, the ancient being said. I have seen many species join this council. Most come with humility or fear or calculation. Humans came with determination. It's refreshing. What happens now? Jake asked. Now you participate. You vote on issues. You contribute to council projects. You share your knowledge and learn from others. You become part of something larger than any single species. Elder Tom's eyes, all four of them, gleamed with something that might have been amusement. And you will likely cause considerable chaos. Humans seem to have a talent for that. We'll try to be good chaos, Jake promised. As the chamber began to empty, Jake found a moment of quiet. He looked around at the alien architecture, at the species mingling and talking, at the stars visible through the transparent ceiling. Earth was out there somewhere, a small blue world in an endless galaxy. But it wasn't so small anymore. Its people had proven themselves. They had earned their place. Jake thought about all the humans back home who would hear this news. The children who would grow up knowing humanity was part of a galactic community. The scientists who would have access to alien knowledge. The future that had just opened up for his species. It was worth the pain. Worth the fear. Worth every difficult moment of the trials. Valera passed by one more time, heading for the exit. She paused. The mountain, she said. How did you do it? How did you face all those fears and keep climbing? Jake thought about it. I didn't try to defeat the fears. I accepted them. They're part of me. The mistakes I've made, the people I've lost, the doubts I carry. They don't make me weak. They make me human. Valera nodded slowly. My people avoid weakness. We deny fear. We project strength always. Perhaps that is why we would fail that trial. Strength isn't about having no fear, Jake said. It's about having fear and moving forward anyway. She smiled, a genuine expression this time. Thank you, human. You've taught me something valuable. As she left, Lisa came up beside Jake. Ready to go home? She asked. Jake looked around the chamber one more time. Yeah. But we'll